The Division last year, it could have been written off as a tech demo. It was sort of an unknown quantity. You were showing off the tech as much as you were showing off the gameplay, it seems. So it seemed like there was a lot of pressure on you guys to sort of either show something that's similar or better. And what we saw, I think, probably made people feel a lot more comfortable about what they thought the Division was. It seems to be in line with what you guys showed last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always really challenging to create a demo for these shows in an open world game that you're pushing for, long-term engagement with your players. You're pushing for, investment in the game, and then show us all of that all wrapped in an RPG, shell. Show us all of that in 4.5 minutes. So it's I love the demo. I think it does a great job of really hinting at some new gameplay features that we're bringing this year, as well as reinforcing the fact of this is the game that everyone got excited for. This is the game that we're building, and that's what we have remained on track in the last year since you saw us.
Awesome. So let's talk about gameplay mechanics. That's
Sure.
I think what everyone wants to get into
Okay.
the in of. It looks to me like the Division is more of an RPG than a shooter. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I would say we're, that's probably one of the bigger misconceptions about the game, is that it's a third-person shooter. We're a Clancy game. Guns are important in the game. But for us, it's more the categories of guns. So you have pistols, SMGs, assault rifles, marksman rifles, and shotguns. And those are like classifications, kind of archetypes of weapons. Rather than, throwing thousands and thousands of guns at you, there's a purpose for the gun choice. And the synergies with the skill choice is the RPG angle and the importance of the weapon.
So the character you play as, is that the same character for everyone in this game? Or are they going to create their own character? Because the sort of the group of folks that you have seems, is it the same group as you had last year?
Yes, that was on purpose, because we wanted to continue the story. Last year it was, dude, check out Manhattan, and then this year we're in Manhattan with Megan and Bronson and Player One. But absolutely, character customization and creation is important, I think, in RPGs. It's your first connection with your avatar, your connection to this world. And so being able to put your own personal touch, are you male, are you female, skin tone, background, that is important.
Okay, so we're looking at the demo here.
Yes.
I'll just give you a little tweak there. Can you just talk us through what's going on here? Maybe talk about some stuff that we mightn't have seen.
So this is, now I'm totally dead. Are we good?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was eating my mic, guys.
No.
So this is what we call Echo. It's a new investigation tool for the agents. So we're constantly collecting digital information from the environment, and at certain locations, Echo will be able to create these 3D scenes, reconstructing either closed-circuit cameras, cell phone conversations, environmental clues, and in this case, we completed missing persons missions, but it could be story elements, could be hidden locations that you don't see that are now clarified. So it's our cutscenes, if you will, that work in an open world multiplayer game. So if you start an Echo scene, I can see it, I can get hints or clues from it, and vice versa.
And you can sort of engage with it and get XP, or you can just kind of leave it to the side and keep walking.
And you'll need to kind of move through them and hunt. It's not something that plays for you. They're frozen moments in time.
So here's where we saw another engagement, like similar to what we saw last year.
Yes.
But there were some differences. It seems like you guys have leaned into the RPG stuff with having hit numbers and whatnot come up
we
there.
had scrolling combat text last year, but it's important, I think, especially when you have a game where quality of items and damage types matter and your distances matter. You need to see the effect of that. So critical hits, the amount of damage you're doing is displayed out.
I want to remind the folks at home, if they have any questions at all, to send them in at Danny O'Dwyer on Twitter, and I'll do my best to try and pull them out.
And I'll dodge them appropriately.
Can we talk? I want to talk about single player.
Yeah.
This game, just from an overall view, I feel like some people aren't too sure about where the co-op starts, where the online element starts, and is there a single player part. So can you just give us sort of a basic overview of how the Division works when you first put it in your console?
Okay. I mean, the Division itself is an online game, but it doesn't mean that you're forced to play with other players. So you could buy the game, play through the entire campaign, take back New York, experience all the content, get to maximum level, and never engage with another human being if you don't want to. But the way we set it up, we really want to encourage multiplayer. We reward it obviously with experience, with currency in the game. We believe the best way to play the game is to play with others. And then if you go into areas where there's player versus player, you're probably going to want to have somebody to have your back a little bit, or you're just kind of fodder.
So when you're walking around in this world, what is the maximum amount of other players that could be in your game as you're playing?
In the open world, it's phased. Your group is what you'll see. But so it's kind of like an instanced New York, but it's different. But that's a good way to visualize.
That's a touchstone that people understand. Yeah.
But then there's public areas, like the last kind of stronghold or foothold we have in the area for the friendly faction in the game is a public hub.
Okay.
And then the dark zones that we have in the game are public areas. So
are there areas where you'd be bumping into people you don't know, or is this very much an opt-in situation?
It's opt-in,
okay.
So you'll know when you go into an area where you could potentially run into other players.
But would it be a player that you knew, that you were friends with, or could it be someone randomly?
It could be a random.
Oh, it could be.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Okay. Because I think that's, for instance, Watch Dogs, when we first saw that, it looked like the engagements and the hacking stuff might happen sort of a little bit less, with a little bit less of your control, but it actually seemed to be much more of a controlled experience. So there is an element of random interaction in the Division, but just in specific areas.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think I'm not sure how fun that might be if you're just kind of opted in on, but the game is about choice. We really push that with the map that you saw in the demos, with how we encourage you to experience the content in the game. We don't want to be leading the player around New York. We want that to be a choice. So when you go into an area that those kind of things can happen, you will definitely know, and it will be a choice.
It's reminding me a bit of Hellgate London, actually, in that respect.
Okay.
That's right. Joel Adam Powley on Twitter is asking, how does the death mechanic work in terms of respawning and losing gear and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that the team and we at Massive continue to iterate upon. So respawn mechanics is basically probably what he's asking about. Is something that you kind of hone up until the end. You want death to be punishing. We want it to be punishing in the game, but not too punishing, so that it just keeps people from playing. And what makes them want to drop it. So you definitely respawn in the game, and we look at where that location is. But details of durability loss and all that, that's still in flux.
We're still iterating on that. Okay. Brett Cadeau asks, are all the car doors able to be closed? So
every single car door in Manhattan.
The gameplay we just showed, there's a part where one of the players runs up and hits it. Like, are you doing this intentionally now?
Car door 2.0. That's our realization director Tobias Newman threw that in there. He's a big fan of that. But yes, we had to have a car door at some point. But no, I mean, on a serious note, environmental interactions or environmental animations, if you will, are important. I think it's great for the game. They're great for immersion, so you will have them. But I absolutely can say that not every car door in New York will be closable.
This trailer you released, CG trailers I'm often not a fan of, but I thought this was absolutely incredible. You're sort of alluding to earlier as well, it's sort of a dangerous trailer, because for a AAA game it's actually quite moody, understated, and there's not much crazy action going on.
Yeah.
Is this something that you guys are kind of aware of, where you're trying to ensure that you get the mainstream attention by having a game that has shooting in it and has elements of touchstones that people mainstream gamers can take, but then are you really trying to make something that's particularly not like that, is actually a bit more rich and moody and
Yeah, I think we are an action RPG, so there is going to be a lot of fighting and combat in the game. But what are you doing that for? What is your connection to what you're saving? Why are you doing this? We want to introduce the agents themselves, because again, that's another challenge with an RPG where you're the hero, but we want the Division to be kind of a cognitive thing. People know what it is. Like, what am I part of?
Is the Division? Is it the Division itself? Is it a sort of an uprising, civilian uprising, or not uprising, rather a civilian, almost like a vigilante group, or?
It's a federal unit that's been trained for CBRN, which is super non-sexy, but it's chemical, biological, radioactive, and nuclear training. So to respond to these type of events. So it's a new Tom Clancy unit that then is activated when this goes down. So it's absolutely not a civilian unit, but they're more civilian in that we're embedded in society, and they're only activated if something like this happens.
And who's the primary antagonist in this then? Is it groups within the world that are trying to take over what's left of New York, or
that you'll find out when you play?
Oh, here we go.
But yes, but definitely it's there's a lot of factions like you see in the CGI. We introduce a couple like the thugs that you'll see a lot. You know, the people taking advantage of civilians or the sick in the city. And then the last guys, the guys with flamethrowers, the cleaners, is our first kind of real faction introduction.
The cleaners?
The cleaners.
That is terrifying.
Yes.
That's
so
absolutely awful.
They're roaming New York. They're attracted to levels of high contagion, and they're definitely group-oriented, so you're not going to want to take them on when you run around by yourself. And they're a roaming faction, so you could potentially run into them all over New York.
So outside of the campaign, you've said there are PvP areas, there are sort of safe zones where you might run into other players as well. Then there's the single-player campaign, which can be played, I guess, either on your own or with.
Yeah, hopefully the multiplayer campaign.
Sorry,
yes.
So outside of that, the straight-edge campaign, this is what you're doing. Is it quite linear, or are you given a wide area of a map and you're sort of left to your own devices?
Yeah, you're absolutely given you get a readout, you get a choice. The map is really, really critical in the game. We're really pushing, I believe, as much information as you can on the map so that it's almost like a menu. What's happening? What do I want to choose? Where do I want to go? And so, but there is New York. It's an RPG, so New York does have a progression to it. So there might be places that you can go, but you won't. You won't have as much success if you venture there.
I'm having absolutely loads of questions, especially from RPG fans.
All right, what's up, guys?
Queen asked a really good one. What kinds of things will your character have to watch out for beside enemies? So, are you guys leaning into stuff in terms of food, drink, rest, or items that you might need?
Sure, it's a great question. We get a lot of feedback at Massive on our forums and everything about the survival aspect with the Division, and then we know there's a lot of interest for that. We hear it. We're looking into how we can address that. But for the game itself, what we wanted to do with food and water is take that mechanic that's pretty harsh in a lot of other games and make it a positive. So they're important in the game, food and water and resources, but they're only a positive. So if you don't have them, you don't die or starve to death, which is a very punishing mechanic in games.
Cool. Last question before you go, Ryan. I want to ask you, The Division, it seems like that game, almost like I feel like Watch Dogs was at one stage, which perhaps didn't deliver, in that it's one of those games that people think is the true next-gen experience.
Yep.
Is The Division a type of game that could not have been done on previous generation consoles, and what is it about this new level of power that allows you to make this game?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that the game could have been done, obviously, on previous generations of consoles, but nowhere near the level of detail that we can get to, nowhere near the animation level, the immersion that we can create for the players, and to plug our engine, which is awesome. The Snowdrop engine, I mean, it's being developed for this game. So things that we need, because we need some paint cans that we can do secondary destruction, or we need to brush off some snow and have that work. It's same day that can be actually in the game. So that's really what has empowered our, from the artists to the designers to the tech teams to be able to bring the game to this level of detail and this scale.
Perfect. Ryan Bernard, pleasure as always, game director on The Division. Thank you so much for coming on. We got so many big games coming up on today's stage. I unfortunately have to go and take a little bit of a break, but Cam Robinson will be back in a second with friggin' Far Cry 4. Stick around here on GameSpot.com.